The first time Ethan Carter saw me, I was nothing but a target. His sharp blue eyes locked onto me like a predator sizing up prey. And in that crowded college cafeteria, I felt the weight of his stare burn through my skin. By the end of freshman year, his cruelty had carved scars deeper than I could ever admit. My name is Jamie Reynolds, and I was 18 when I arrived at Willow Creek University, a small liberal arts school nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. I was a skinny kid with dreams too big for my quiet hometown, clutching a scholarship and a sketchbook filled with half-finished drawings. I thought college would be my escape, a place to finally be myself, to embrace the truth I'd hidden for years. I was gay. But Ethan, the golden boy of the lacrosse team, made sure my freedom came at a cost. It started with whispers. "Faggot," he'd mutter under his breath as he passed me in the dorm hallway, his voice low enough to deny but sharp enough to cut. Then came the pranks me books accidentally knocked into puddles. My dorm room door defaced with slurs scrawled in marker. By sophomore year, his taunts had escalated to public humiliation. One night, at a frat party I was naive enough to attend, he dumped a beer over my head in front of a laughing crowd. "Go back to your closet, Jamie," he sneered, and the room erupted. I ran out, the cold night air stinging my soaked clothes, vowing never to let him see me break. But inside, I was shattering. Why me? I asked myself that question every night, lying awake in my cramped dorm room. Ethan was everything I was: confident, popular, untouchable. His broad shoulders and easy grin won him friends effortlessly, while I hid behind my sketchbook, trying to disappear. I didn't know then that his cruelty wasn't random. I didn't know that Ethan Carter was fighting a war inside himself, one that mirrored my own. 3 years after graduation, I thought I'd left Ethan behind. I'd built a life in Boston, working as a graphic designer, finding solace in a small circle of friends who knew my truth and loved me for it. I was 24, finally comfortable in my skin, though the memories of Willow Creek still haunted my quieter moments. Then, one rainy October evening, I saw him again. I was at a coffee shop in Back Bay, sketching in my notebook, when the door chimed. I glanced up, and there he was, Ethan, older but unmistakable, his blonde hair slightly longer, his frame leaner but still commanding. He froze when he saw me, his blue eyes widening with something I couldn't place. Guilt. Fear. Before I could process it, he walked straight toward my table. "Jamie," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Can we talk?" I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, my heart pounding like it had back in college. I didn't know it then, but that moment would unravel everything I thought I knew about him and about myself. The rain tapped against the coffee shop window as Ethan sat across from me, his hands fidgeting with a paper napkin. He looked different, not just older, but raw, like he'd been stripped of the armor he wore in college. I braced myself for an apology, expecting it to be hollow, but what he said caught me off guard. "I was a monster to you," he began, his voice low, almost breaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know why." He told me about his father, a man who ruled their family with an iron fist and a Bible, preaching that being gay was a sin. Ethan grew up suffocating under expectations to be the perfect son, the star athlete, the man who'd never stray from his father's rigid path. But he was hiding a secret, one he'd buried so deep it turned into rage. He was gay, too, and every time he tormented me, he was trying to kill the part of himself he hated. "I saw you," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "You were so open, even when you were scared. I envied you, and I hated you for it." His words hit like a punch. All those years, I'd thought I was alone in my pain, but Ethan had been drowning, too. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to bridge the gap between us. But another part, the part that still woke up sweating from nightmares of his laughter, wanted to walk away and never look back. I don't know if I can do this, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. You broke me, Ethan. He nodded, his jaw tight. I know. But I'm trying to fix what I broke, starting with myself. He stood to leave, but not before sliding a folded piece of paper across the table. If you ever want to talk, he said, I'm here. I didn't open the paper until he was gone. It was his phone number, scrawled in messy handwriting. I shoved it into my pocket, unsure if I'd ever use it. But something about his vulnerability lingered, tugging at the edges of my anger. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's face kept flashing in my mind, his college smirk replaced by something softer, more human. I hated how his confession had stirred something in me, a curiosity I didn't want to feel. I spent the next week avoiding his number, throwing myself into work, sketching until my hands ached. But every quiet moment brought me back to that coffee shop, to the weight of his words. Finally, I texted him. Just one word, why? His reply came instantly, because I owe you the truth. Meet me again. We met at a park the next day, the air crisp with autumn. Ethan was waiting on a bench, a notebook in his hands, looking like he hadn't slept either. He didn't waste time with small talk. I've been writing, he said, opening the notebook to reveal pages filled with cramped, honest words. About what I did to you. About who I was. Who I'm trying to be. He handed me the notebook, and I read the first page. It was a letter to me, raw and unfiltered, detailing the shame he'd carried, the fear that had driven him to hurt me. It wasn't an excuse, it was an explanation, a plea for understanding. I don't expect you to trust me, he said, but I want to earn it. I closed the notebook, my hands trembling. For the first time, I saw Ethan not as the bully who'd haunted me, but as a man trying to claw his way out of his own darkness. And in that moment, I felt something shift, a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I met regularly, always in public place sparks, cafes, quiet corners of the city where we could talk without the weight of our past pressing too hard. Each meeting chipped away at my defenses, though I kept them up, wary of letting him too close. His honesty was disarming, but trust was a fragile thing, and I wasn't ready to hand it over. One afternoon, as we walked along the Charles River, the water reflecting the fading October light, Ethan stopped and looked at me. Do you ever think about forgiving me? He asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness felt like a betrayal of the boy who'd cried himself to sleep in college, the one who'd spent years rebuilding himself. But standing there, watching Ethan's breath form clouds in the cold air, I realized I was tired of carrying the pain. I'm trying, I said finally. But it's not easy. He nodded, accepting my answer without pushing. That's when I noticed the small things, the way he listened when I spoke, the way he remembered details about my art, my life. He wasn't the Ethan I'd known. Or maybe he was, and I'd never seen the real him. One evening, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. I hesitated. The idea of being in his space too intimate, too risky. But curiosity won out, and I found myself standing outside a modest brownstone in South End, my heart racing as I knocked. His apartment was small but warm, filled with books and photos that told a story of a man trying to rebuild. He'd cooked nothing fancy, just pasta with homemade sauce, but the effort felt personal, like an offering. Over dinner, he told me about his life after college, the years spent running from himself, the therapy that finally forced him to face his truth, the moment he came out to his family and lost half of them in the process. I thought being honest would set me free, he said, staring at his plate. But it cost me everything I thought I needed. I wanted to stay guarded, But his vulnerability was a mirror. I'd lost people, 2 friends who didn't understand. A father who stopped calling when I came out. For the first time, I saw our shared wounds. The ways we'd both been shaped by fear and rejection. After dinner, we sat on his couch, a quiet comfort settling between us. He reached for my hand, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away. I didn't. His touch was gentle, a stark contrast to the cruelty I'd once known. When he leaned in, his lips brushing mine, I froze, not out of fear, but because the warmth of that moment felt like a dream I didn't trust. "I don't deserve this," he whispered, pulling back. "Not after what I did." "Maybe not," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm here anyway." That kiss marked a turning point, though it wasn't a fairy tale. Trust was a slow build, layered with doubts and late-night talks. Ethan was patient, never pushing me beyond what I could give. He showed up to my art shows, cheered when I landed a big client, and listened when I needed to vent about the world. But the past lingered, a shadow that crept into our quiet moments. One night, as we lay in my bed, the city humming outside, I told him about the nightmares. "I still see you sometimes," I admitted. "The old you," laughing as I ran from that party. His face crumpled, and he pulled me close. "I'll spend my life making that up to you," he said, "if you'll let me." I wanted to believe him, but a part of me wondered if love could ever fully heal the wounds he'd left. Still, I let myself fall, little by little, into the possibility of us. As winter blanketed Boston, Ethan and I grew closer, our relationship a delicate dance of hope and hesitation. We spent weekends exploring the city, sharing coffee in cozy cafes, and stealing kisses under snow-dusted streetlights. But the past was never far away. Every time I let myself love him, a memory would surface, his voice taunting me, his laughter echoing in. I'd pull back, guarding my heart. One evening, at a gallery opening where my art was displayed, Ethan stood by my side, beaming with pride. A friend of mine, Sarah, pulled me aside, her brow furrowed. "Are you sure about him?" she asked. "After everything he did?" Her words stung because they echoed my own doubts. I glanced at Ethan, who was chatting with a stranger about my work, his enthusiasm genuine. "I don't know," I admitted. "But he's not that person anymore." Sarah didn't push, but her question lingered. Could someone change that much? Could I trust that Ethan's remorse was real, or was I setting myself up to be hurt again? That night, I confronted him. We were at my apartment, the air heavy with unspoken tension. "How do I know you won't hurt me again?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan didn't flinch. "You don't," he said honestly. "All I can do is show you who I am now, every day, until you believe it." His words were steady, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear that I'd walk away. It was the first time I realized how much he needed this, needed me, to believe in his redemption. And maybe, just maybe, I needed it too. We didn't sleep that night. Instead, we talked about college, about the pain we'd both carried, about the futures we wanted. He told me about his dream of starting a nonprofit for queer youth, a place where kids like us could feel safe. I told him about my art, how it had saved me when nothing else could. By morning, I felt lighter, like we'd laid the foundation for something real. But life has a way of testing fragile things. A week later, Ethan got a call from his father. I watched his face drain of color as he listened, his knuckles white around the phone. When he hung up, he was quiet for a long time. "He's sick," Ethan said finally. "Cancer. He wants to see me." I knew what that meant. Ethan's father had disowned him when he came out, and the thought of facing him again was tearing Ethan apart. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked, surprising myself. He looked at me, his eyes searching. "You do that? After everything?" I nodded. "I'm not letting you face him alone." The drive to Ethan's hometown in rural Pennsylvania was 6 hours of tense silence, broken only by the hum of the radio and the occasional brush of his hand against mine. His father lived in a small, weathered house at the edge of town, the kind of place that felt frozen in time. When we pulled up, Ethan's shoulders tensed, and I could see the boy he'd been scared, desperate to please, trapped in a life that didn't fit. Inside, his father, Robert, was frail, his face gaunt from illness. But his eyes were as hard as Ethan had described, and they narrowed when he saw me. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice sharp. "This is Jamie," Ethan said, his tone steady but laced with defiance. "My boyfriend." The word hung in the air, a challenge. Robert's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Instead, he gestured for us to sit. The visit was short, filled with stilted small talk and long silences. Ethan tried to connect, asking about his father's health, his memories, but Robert's answers were curt. As we left, he grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're still my son," he said gruffly. "But I don't understand this. I never will." Ethan nodded, his face unreadable. In the car, he broke down, tears streaming as he gripped the steering wheel. "I thought it'd be different," he whispered. "I thought he'd see me." I reached for him, pulling him close. "I see you," I said, "and I'm not going anywhere." That trip changed something in Ethan. He threw himself into his nonprofit idea, spending late nights drafting plans, researching grants. I helped where I could, designing a logo, sketching ideas for a community center. Watching him work, I saw a fire I hadn't known in Collegia, passion to make things right, not just for us, but for others. But the closer we got, the more I struggled with my own fears. One night, as we lay in bed, I admitted the truth. "I'm scared," I said. "What if this falls apart? What if I can't forget?" Ethan turned to me, his hand brushing my cheek. "Then we'll face it together," he said. "Every fear, every doubt. I'm not running anymore." His words were a lifeline, and I clung to them. But deep down, I knew the past wasn't done with us yet. Spring brought new beginnings, but also new challenges. Ethan's nonprofit, Haven House, secured its first grant, and we celebrated with cheap wine and takeout in my tiny apartment. His joy was infectious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that our happiness was fragile, like a house of cards waiting for a gust of wind. That gust came in the form of a letter. It arrived at my apartment, addressed to me in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words typed and unsigned, "He'll hurt you again. Leopards don't change their spots." I showed it to Ethan, expecting him to brush it off, but his face darkened. "It's probably someone from college," he said. "Someone who knows what I did." The letter rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I started noticing strange looks from strangers, a sense of being watched. Ethan insisted it was nothing, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He started spending more time at my place, as if protecting me from an unseen threat. One night, we attended a fundraiser for Haven House, a small event in a community center. I was proud of Ethan, watching him speak passionately about his vision. But as I mingled, a man approached me, a former classmate from Willow Creek. His name was Mark, and he'd been part of Ethan's circle back then. "He's got you fooled," Mark said, his voice low. "Ethan's good at playing the hero now, but he hasn't changed." I wanted to argue, but Mark's words hit a nerve. That night, I confronted Ethan again, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. "Is there something you're not telling me?" I asked. "Something from back then?" Ethan hesitated, And that pause was enough to make my heart sink. "There's nothing," he said finally. "Just people who can't let go of the past." But I wasn't sure I believed him. The letter wasn't the last. Over the next month, more arrived, each one cryptic, each one warning me about Ethan. I tried to ignore them, but they fed my doubts, gnawing at the trust we'd built. Ethan grew quieter, his usual warmth dimmed by the weight of my suspicion. One evening, I found him sitting on my couch, staring at his old college notebook, the one he'd shown me months ago. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice heavy. My stomach dropped. "What?" He took a deep breath. "Back in college, there was someone else. Another guy I targeted. Not like you, but bad enough. His name was Chris. I never apologized to him." The confession hit me hard. I'd thought I was the only one, that Ethan's cruelty had been mine alone to bear. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I was ashamed," he said. "I thought if I could make things right with you, it'd be enough. But it's not." He told me about Chris, a quiet freshman who'd left Willow Creek after one semester. Ethan's taunts had driven him out, and now, years later, Ethan was haunted by it. "I need to find him," he said. "I need to make this right." I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was angry, betrayed by the omission. But another part admired his resolve, his refusal to run from his past anymore. "I'll help you," I said, surprising myself. "But no more secrets, Ethan. I mean it." We tracked Chris down through social media, finding him in Philadelphia. Ethan wrote him a letter, pouring out his regret, and asked to meet. To my surprise, Chris agreed. The meeting was tense, held in a quiet diner. Chris was guarded, his eyes wary as he listened to Ethan's apology. I stayed silent, watching as Ethan laid himself bare, his voice breaking as he recounted his shame. "I can't undo what I did," Ethan said, "but I'm trying to be better. I hope you can believe that." Chris didn't forgive him, not outright, but he nodded, his expression softening. "I'm glad you're trying," he said. "That's more than I expected." As we left, Ethan was quiet, but I could see a weight had lifted. For the first time, I felt like we were truly in this together, facing the past as a team. The letters stopped after that, but the damage lingered. I was still processing Ethan's confession about Chris, grappling with the fact that his cruelty had touched others. Yet, seeing him confront his past head-on made me believe in him more, not less. Haven House opened its doors that summer, a small but vibrant space for queer youth to find community. I watched Ethan pour his heart into it, leading workshops, mentoring kids who reminded me of myself at 18. His passion was undeniable, and it drew me closer, even as I wrestled with my fears. One evening, as we painted a mural in the community center, a vibrant rainbow of colors, I caught him watching me, a soft smile on his face. "What?" I asked, paint smudged on my cheek. "You're incredible," he said simply. "I don't know how you're still here, after everything." I set down my brush, my heart full. "Because I see you, Ethan. The real you." He kissed me then, right there in the empty center, paint cans scattered around us. It was a moment of pure, unguarded love, and for the first time, I let myself believe it could last. But the past wasn't done with us. One night, I got a call from Sarah. "Jamie, you need to see this," she said, her voice urgent. She sent me a link to a blog post, anonymous but vicious, detailing Ethan's college bullying in excruciating detail. My name was there, along with Chris's, and the words were meant to wound, to expose. Ethan was devastated when I showed him. "Who's doing this?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why can't they let us move on?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew we couldn't ignore it. We traced the blog to Mark, the classmate from the fundraiser. When we confronted him, he didn't deny it. You don't get to rewrite your story, Ethan. He spat. You don't get to play the hero. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he apologized again, not just to Mark, but to everyone he'd hurt, in a public post on Haven House's website. It was raw, honest, and unapologetically human. The fallout from the blog was brutal but brief. Haven House faced scrutiny, but Ethan's transparency won more allies than enemies. The kids at the center rallied around him, their trust unshaken. And I stood by his side, not because it was easy, but because it was right. 1 year after that first coffee shop meeting, Ethan and I moved in together. A small apartment filled with art and books and the promise of a shared future. We weren't perfect, doubts still crept in, and the past still whispered, but we faced it together, one day at a time. On a quiet autumn evening, as we sat on our balcony overlooking the city, Ethan took my hand. I used to think love was something I didn't deserve, he said. But you changed that, Jamie. You showed me what it means to be whole. I leaned against him, the weight of our journey settling into something warm, something real. We're both learning, I said, and I wouldn't trade this for anything. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, painful, and hard one, but it was ours. Ethan's cruelty had once broken me, but his love fierce, flawed, and unwavering helped me heal. And in loving him, I found a strength I didn't know I had. Haven House grew, a beacon for kids who needed it most. Ethan and I grew, too, building a life not just for ourselves, but for others. The past would always be there, a scar we both carried, but it no longer defined us. Love, I learned, isn't about erasing pain. It's about facing it, holding it, and choosing to build something beautiful anyway. And with Ethan by my side, I knew we'd keep building. One moment, one choice, one love at a time.